And we're back with the second part two. We're reviewing part two. We're doing part two for the Matthew Cox, Lex Fridman podcast. We did part one, but the podcast, the original, the Lex Fridman podcast was 5 hours. So we decided that it deserves a second part.
It deserves much more than 15 minutes. So we thought 30 minutes would be perfect to cover everything that was discussed in the 5 hour plus.
Exactly. Now, I do want to actually, I want to start with the point that I forgot. If you listen to the first part, then you heard me try to remember something and then forget. So I'm not going to forget it this time. Yeah. The point I wanted to bring up was it's very interesting that there's this idea of the snitching, right? Of each criminal is trading the information he has about the bigger criminal to the government, and that's how they get away. That's how they get off on years. Like they inform on other people, and then they get off. I just think we could go a few ways with this. Like, right, there's a whole idea of broken windows theory.
Yeah.
You know, if you stop the people who are breaking the windows, then if you don't have broken windows in your community, then people think that you're upstanding and they do less crime.
And also, if you criminalize smaller activity, then that makes it more difficult, or it inhibits people from doing larger criminality.
Exactly. So I don't think that it's useful to run a justice system that is based on just one guy getting the next guy, because who are the biggest players? The biggest players are governments. It's going to lead back to a government official, a government a corruption at a government level. There's not going to be like a final. See, that was sort of like what happened with the 2008 meltdown. Have you watched The Big Short?
Yes.
So at the very end...
it's very weird seeing Michael in such a serious role. Michael from The Office. The Office playing in a serious role, Steve Carell. It was very funny to watch.
Did not watch...
While it was a very sad movie, it was very funny.
So, unfortunately, I did not watch The Office.
Oh my gosh. I can't understand how we talk about culture and like you're like I read a Dr. Seuss book.
No, so at the end of the movie, it was a very poignant line that who was the main guy, the blonde guy? I forgot his name.
Wait, in Big Short, that's Michael. That's Steve Carell.
No, not Steve Carell. Not Steve Carell. The other one, blonde.
Oh. I don't remember the other name, Dr. Burry or something.
No, the mortgage broker. He was the narrator the whole time. Not the mortgage, the broker.
Yeah. That's I can't remember his name. Okay,
I forgot his name. Anyway, he made the point. He's like at the end of the movie, he's like, and after this whole thing, all these bank executives were arrested and government officials were arrested, and there was new laws written in the system and then he's like, actually, none of that happened. The whole thing was blamed on this one guy, right? This like lawyer or whatever, this accountant, and it was like, that's exactly. If a government just tries to run a justice system based off of like getting the next guy in trouble, all you're going to get is at the end of the day some random official somewhere or some random business guy who's going to get arrested, but not the root of it, because the biggest players are too big.
Right, and along that, I think it's actually on that note, and also even worse, because it's an incentive for people to commit white-collar crime, because white-collar crime is only disincentivized if there's actual punishment. But if my punishment means that I'm going to go to prison, let's say, even if I go to prison, but I could just rat on the next guy.
It's all right.
What does it mean if all it means is that I'm going to now just rat on the next guy, and if I rat on the next guy, that means that I could get a lower sentence, I could get out of jail. So there's no incentive to not do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'll have a great life. I'll have this adventurous life of white collar crime. And then when push comes to shove, they'll either pardon me because I gave up the bigger fish, or like what happened in Catch Me If You Can, they'll hire me. In Catch Me If You Can, the whole moral of the story was that he ended up working for the government. So now the government wants those people. They want the really smart people who are going to help catch the future criminals. But there's always going to be that next guy who is so good and so brilliant that the government wants them to join their team, and they'll catch the next guy. So it's just a revolving circle.
I'm going to respond to that. I just want to say something that I want to talk about after, and that is the idea of like, does making crime difficult did it ever stop anybody? But to respond to your point, you're not really getting a get out of jail card. You're going to jail, right, for let's say 15 years, and then you get a reduced sentence of 5 years. But if you do crime after that, you're getting a sentence. There's no like, yeah, you get out of jail once, but like if you go back to jail after that, it's not like you could try to evade law enforcement for as long as you can, but then eventually you're gonna get caught. And you're gonna go to jail, and then
Matthew Cox was under probation. He was arrested. He was under probation, and then he still committed the crime, and yet they still pardoned him because he gave up a bigger fish. There was no incentive really for him to stop after the first time. It's like almost, this is back to your original point of the broken windows. If after the first time, they didn't just give him probation, they knocked his head off. They said, you're in jail now for 10 years for doing what maybe would be called a misdemeanor, or not a misdemeanor, but lower level crime. If after that, he went to jail for a very serious time, that would be that. Then in the future he wouldn't have done it because he sees the penalty was so severe. Which is actually interesting. Just on a side note, you ever see this? There was this guy. I think it was a lawyer who wrote like an idea that instead of people going to jail, they should have an option of getting flogged. You ever see this? The guy, it was, instead of going to jail, you could go go in front of the judge, and the judge says, "Oh well, okay, your crimes means that you're going to go to jail for 3.5 years." And the guy's like, "Oh no, 3.5 years." And the guy's like, "Or we could give you 6 floggings, and then you could go home today." And it's such an interesting idea because jail, though, the whole jail thing, I know it's a side note, and it's not really the point of this conversation today, but the whole jail thing really doesn't really inhibit crime, one, and makes people better at crime because in jail they connect with other people
they network.
They network, and they're better criminals, and they come out of jail, they know much more than they came in. Here, let me beat you. Let me give you a good, serious beating, which you feel for months afterwards. And then you're like, well, I don't know if I want that, because the next time, maybe it's going to be 12 floggings. Maybe it's going to be something even more severe. So I think it's very interesting to get, they should offer that as a punishment. I think that would be good.
I hear, but I really wonder how much crime it would curb. And again, I do hear it's a serious problem that people network in jail and then they just become bigger criminals after. But in the end of the day, they are off the streets for however many years, and during that many years, the crime isn't happening.
Mm-hmm. Right, on the streets, and again, but then the bigger question of, like we talked before, is does crime ever stop because people are just going at it again? I wanted to bring up.
Well, I wanted to ask, like, does making crime difficult actually stop anybody? Like, does somebody like try to do crime and then it just doesn't work because it's just too hard, and then they stop and they're like, right. Oh, this is too difficult, or they just keep going until they get caught? Like, it just sounds like especially with Matthew Cox, he was saying, I have, by the way, a question I want to ask at the very end of the podcast, right before we end. But like, I just don't see like the difficulty of doing crime stopping anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right. Listen, again, the people who don't commit crime, I would imagine, is because they're just not interested. They're not clever enough, they're not smart enough, or they're just not interested. I'd rather have just normal way of life, or it's not even an option. Back to one of our earlier conversations about being exposed to various ways of life that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Where, it could be that there are people who grow up in criminal families, or there are criminals in the family who are exposed to these type of people, and maybe it is an option for life. But I think most people grow up in societies or in families or environments and communities. It's just not an option. So they look for other ways to make money, look for other ways to live their lives rather than just criminal activity, which means that the criminals really are a very small percentage of our society. It's a very, very small percentage of people who commit crimes
Why
because
white collar crime? I think it's particularly very intelligent people.
right, it's very intelligent people, and sometimes I guess they fall into it. Like Matthew says, he fell into it. The manager at his bank told him what to do, and he's like, "It's so easy. Let me see how far I can take this." And also, one of his things he says is that he was 29 years old and he had no money. Nothing. He had no opportunity, the way he views it, and it was just worth it for him to do it. So it's such a small select group of people that are really potentially involved in it, and the government is incentivizing it. They're not making it so bad for it to happen. I would think the government can do much more in making it a criminal action to do it. For example, remember the whole famous debate with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and she accused him of cheating on his taxes, and he says, "No, I don't cheat on my taxes. I use the same loopholes that all your donors use."
Right.
And a really smart guy in America can make a boatload of money with legal means. Within legal means, if you're really clever and you're really good and you want to use all the loopholes that are in the system, use those things. And you'll make a lot of money and you'll do wonderfully for yourself. So the idea to go into crime, I just think it could be there's no disincentive. They're exposed to it, and the punishment isn't big enough to prevent them. And especially now, considering that the government's going to give you something else, they're going to pardon you for you joining them, for you helping them out, just makes it also, makes it worse. One of the, just quickly, I know we have to end soon, and you wanted to finish off with something. There's one thing I wanted to mention. It was very evident that everyone in the story, everyone in the story was only looking for their own skin. And if they were safe, they were willing to look the other way and do whatever they needed to do as long as their own skin wasn't in jeopardy. Even to the point, and this was very interesting to me, Frank, the lawyer in prison, who was a really brilliant guy, obviously nuts but brilliant. And he came
Emperor Frank, please.
Emperor Frank. I'm sorry, Frank. Please, I'm part of your army. Don't kill me. Emperor Frank, right? He was able to do things that other lawyers wouldn't, and I was wondering, why wouldn't those other lawyers do those things? They know the law. It wasn't like he was saying things that they couldn't figure out. And I believe it's because when you're in the club, you want to be part of the club. You don't want to be the guy who's coming up with all these ideas and things and to get this criminal out of prison. You're in it for your own neck, and your neck is not just your money, it's your social status. And social status drives behavior to such an extreme that you're not going to go all the way out. You're not going to do everything you can do in order to preserve your social status. And we see it in society. Elon Musk, I think, is a prime example. Elon Musk, to me, appears to be a guy who doesn't care about his social status. He has one agenda. His agenda is to create, and he'll create until he can't create. Social status, social well-being, how he's viewed publicly does not matter to him. And you could produce so much more when you're just focused on that nuance rather than your social well-being. Because otherwise, whatever the social club wants me to do, that's what I'll do.
So I wonder if that's an argument with what you're saying about white-collar crime, meaning like maybe someone like Matthew Cox who doesn't really care, but most people, like, they have families, they have friends. If all of a sudden, they're caught doing white-collar crime, it's like super embarrassing. Like they wouldn't want to do it because of that social status.
I hear that. No, that's interesting. That it could be a disincentive, just like it's an incentive to not do. It's also an incentive to do. Social status does have some bearing, but we see how big it is, and how strong it is, not just in terms of a person not wanting to commit bad activities so that he doesn't lose his social status, but also people won't do what is right, what is within the law to preserve their social status. I think both things are true. What do you want to end with, Avichal? You said you wanted to bring something up.
I want to end with the following question, but I need to make a disclaimer that the following question is the answer that either of us will provide to this question is pure speculation. We do not know anything about anybody. We are not involved on any level whatsoever. My question is, do you think that Matthew Cox today is involved in white-collar crime?
You're saying this is an unanswerable question. You're taking one of the rewatchables, one of their segments, the unanswerable questions, and is he involved in it? My gut is that he isn't. My gut that he's not involved in that kind of activity anymore. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because he enjoyed the poisonous fruit. He enjoyed, the stolen waters. He had everything he can from it. He went on trips. He had beautiful cars, beautiful women, everything he wanted, he had. And he went up against the government and nearly succeeded and was toppled down. And he's now discovered a new life, a life where he could be successful. He could enjoy community and family. He could enjoy some of the other things in life. I don't believe he's going to be willing to risk that for a little bit more of a taste of the old life. You seem to be vehemently in disagreement.
I so strongly disagree, and here's why. Matt Cox is a perfect example of an addict. Perfect example. He was almost taken down by the 2 U.S. Marshals. He was literally almost taken down. A mile later, he is taking homeless people's information. That is an addict like you can't. And there is no healing from an addict. The addict is not healing from prison. There is ways to heal, but it's not. He didn't go through any of that process, and he is. And every single time he does a crime, it emboldens him. I so strongly doubt that he has not tasted it again and wants it and has done it.
So I would respond that in that instance, what other choice did he have? He was on the run. He had no identities. He needed to run. He wasn't caught yet. He needed to run. The only way for him to run was to get more identities. He didn't do it for the hell of it. He didn't do it because, let me see if I can get away with it even now when I'm 2 blocks away from the cops. I need it in order to survive.
You only need one identity, and all you need is a white guy. Like he said, the reason why he stopped is because it was 3 white guys. You never see 3 white guys together. It was
so easy. It was so easy, but he needed it. What he needed then was to get away. Can I still try to get away?
You could find a homeless white guy 20 miles away.
At the end of it, though,
a mile away, your heart is still pumping from almost going to jail. Your heart
at the end of it, he went to jail for 7 years where he didn't know if he would be stabbed every day. That was not a life that he loved. It was more than 7 years, maybe 10 years. It was not a life that he liked. It was a life that was very difficult for him. And that kind of life, he tasted the results and he said, I had my life. I did everything I could. Now let me see if I could do it in a straight and narrow and if I can enjoy that life. Avichal, once again, a great show.
Thank
I'm
you.
on the side of the highway here. I'm driving to Lakewood. I'm on the side of the highway, but we do this once a week, as all of our listeners are expecting.
Our 5 listeners.
There we go.
Ben, good to see you. Until next time.
All right. Terrific. I'll see you soon.
Bye.